Over the past couple of years, there have been many efforts to capture the cheaters in the sport of athletics. Various anti-doping checkpoints have been firmly established around the world. There has been a much higher emphasis on follow-up when looking into the details of these individuals. And no matter what the situation is, no matter how weird it gets, the truth has always been pursued relentlessly. There have been some rather wacky and strange moments over the past couple of years, including someone that actually switched someone else to pose as themselves for a test. And unfortunately, the country of Kenya has been one of the biggest focal points of confirmed cheating in track and field. Now, this reality is honestly quite complicated, as many see doping as a path to not only running glory, but basic financial stability and to basic sustenance for their families. With poverty playing a ubiquitous role in Kenya, cheating is unfortunately very common. And if you want to take a deeper dive into how prevalent cheating really is in Kenya, I would recommend you read the New York Times article looking into the Kenyan doping crisis, as it talks about the running culture in Kenya, it talks about how vendors make their way into the country with illegal substances, and it even discusses how on one occasion, a massive blanket doping test was done on many athletes. And they entered a stadium, they closed the doors behind them, and as the athletes realized what was happening, they actually jumped over the fences and started running in many different directions. Clearly, something was wrong here. The point is, Kenya clearly has a problem with doping, and the most recent culprit of this massive issue is Judy Kimboy. If we go back to 2024, we can see Judy running a very quick time over the half marathon distance, as she was competing in the 2024 Copenhagen Half Marathon. And for this race, she achieved a time of 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 43 seconds. This is the equivalent to running a 13.1 mile race at a pace of 5 minutes flat per mile, or 3 minutes and 7 seconds per kilometer. This is moving by any measure imaginable, and it makes Kimboy one of the quickest half-marathoners in history. But there was one big problem here, and that's that less than 1 year after this half-marathon, she was found with an illegal substance in her system, and it's a substance that just might be the new hot-ticket item running through Kenya right now: hydrochlorothiazide, a diuretic that most officials believe is being used to mask any other performance-enhancing drug in an athlete's system. Now, if you will remember, this is the exact same substance that was recently found in the previous marathon world record holder, Ruth Chepngetich. Now, Ruth's situation needs no introduction, honestly. She absolutely smashed the marathon world record in last year's Chicago Marathon, where she actually managed to dip under 2 hours and 10 minutes. However, she was later found with this exact substance in her system. And while the typical level of hydrochlorothiazide is around 20 in someone's system, she was found with a level of 3,800 in her system, a shockingly high level above normal. Now, according to the Athletics Integrity Unit's final decision here, which I will make sure to link down below if you're interested, they did not report an exact level of HCTZ for Judy Kimboy, so we're still waiting to hear back on that number. However, this article is full of very interesting pieces of information that show exactly what was happening with Judy Kimboy. According to this decision, Kimboy was found with an adverse analytical finding on May 2nd of this season, and after reporting this finding, they discovered that Kimboy had no therapeutic use exemption, which is when an athlete has a medical condition that warrants the use of a medical device or a certain medication. And this meant that without a TUE, they would initially report this as an initial suspension. But since that stage began, this case has proceeded incredibly quickly. After discovering this positive test, Kimboy reported that she actually visited her doctor on April 3rd of this year, and she actually had the documentation and medical notes to prove this visit. She also stated that she had no clue of any HCTZ in her system or in her medications, but she did request for one of her supplements to be tested, and this substance was All Black Everything Ultimate Pre-Workout, which she obviously used for her running. Now, on August 5th of this season, that was just 6 days ago now, a laboratory from Austria reported that her pre-workout had zero presence of hydrochlorothiazide in the substance. So my guess is that this was a last-ditch effort to find some sort of alibi for her situation, but it simply led to nothing. This lack of hydrochlorothiazide was apparently enough for the AIU to find Kimboy guilty of doping, and she has officially been sentenced to a 2-year ban. Now, on the AIU's final decision here, if we go to point 22, We can see a key point of information on how they're currently dealing with this ban. Right here it states that the AIU has no evidence that the anti-doping rule violations were intentional, and that the mandatory period of ineligibility to be imposed is therefore 2 years. This information is very, very important. If an athlete can make it seem as though they've accidentally took a substance, or at least make it seem as though they are oblivious to the masking abilities of such a diuretic, then they only have 2 years to serve. Whereas if an athlete is found to be tampering with evidence, or intentionally lying, or intentionally taking a performance enhancer, then their punishment is far more severe, often even reaching 10 to 11 years, which is basically a career ender if you ask me. It's also important to show that Kimboy has now admitted to the anti-doping rule violation, and if you do this, if you make this crucial decision, your process immediately becomes shorter compared to if you deny that violation. It's clearly an important task to track down these cheaters because it completely crushed the notion of a level playing field, and it's also quite dangerous. If we go back to the New York Times article here, they actually talk about how on one specific occasion, an athlete actually collapsed and died during a time trial in Kenya. And while they are still waiting on the autopsy to confirm this, they strongly suspect that he died because of a brutal combination of drugs in his system. And when you combine this with physical exertion of extreme proportions, very bad things can happen. It has been a long and troubling few years for Kenya in track and field and in road running. And speaking of road running, Kimboy was apparently ranked number 7th in the world on the road running circuit. So she was clearly a world-class talent, and it is very likely that she scammed a decent amount of money from her road running hustles over the years. Now, on the one hand, I do sympathize with those who have next to no options to survive other than this strange doping option. If you have no other choice, and there's no other means of putting food on the table and actually getting things for your family, then that is honestly terrible. But on the other hand, this goes against some very established rules, and it is the most basic form of cheating. Yet another name has now been added to the extensive list of cheaters in the country of Kenya in athletics. And unfortunately, I do expect many, many more to come over the following months and years. Some will tell you that everyone is doping. In fact, I'm sure that if you go to the comments right now, you will find at least one comment about how everyone is currently doping. I choose to believe that there are those that compete in track and field and in road racing naturally. They compete legally, they don't use any performance-enhancing drugs. However, I also am 100% sure that many, many athletes who are currently using and cheating have just not been caught yet. And now I would love to hear from all of you about this very complicated situation. What do you think about Judy Kimboy's situation? What do you think about the doping culture in Kenya? And also, what do you think is set to happen with doping over the next few years? Are we finally cracking down on the majority of athletes, or are we just barely scratching the surface in athletics? Thanks for watching, everyone, and as always, until next time.